Right, so Bernie Sanders has been forced to cut his workers' hours in the effort to pay them $15 an hour minimum wage. And the reason for this is that it recently came out that his workers were actually averaging about $13 an hour. And obviously, he's one of the politicians running that wants a $15 an hour national minimum or federal minimum wage. And obviously, that's pretty hypocritical, and even his own base was upset with him for that, and rightfully so. And this is just another example of two things. Number one, the hypocrisy of the left, in that if a politician on the right was doing this, they'd be called out by everyone long ago and far and wide, and it'd be a much bigger story. And the other thing is, it's just another example that disproves that the idea that people on the left tend to not understand economics. This is another example that even one of the most, in theory, competent politicians on the left doesn't even understand this, and that artificially paying or forcing people to be paid $15 an hour, it's not a sound economic policy, because number one, it causes unemployment, because people who aren't, if you're not worth $15 an hour and you're forced to pay $15 an hour, then any employer hiring you would be losing money by having you work at whatever their company or business is. So they're not going to hire you, or in the off chance that they do hire you, they're going to have to make up that money some other place. And that's pretty hard to do. And I recently seen a report today that the city of Seattle was the first place in the U.S. that adopted a $15 an hour minimum wage, and they basically found that the number of people hired every year for minimum wage jobs has gone down. So that's an example that it doesn't work, and that wanting to raise the $15 an hour, or to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and number one, it comes from a place of not understanding economics, and number two, it comes from a place of not having to admit the failures of public school, in that public schools are so bad nowadays that you go for 12 years and you're still not even competent enough to earn $15 an hour, which in the US is a decent amount. In Canada, it's not quite as much because the dollar's about a quarter or 25% weaker, but it just goes to show that like $15 an hour, you probably can't. I mean, if inflation wasn't at the point to where it is because of horrible governmental policies, you could probably live off $15 an hour. Not if you have kids, but you probably could. But it's covering up so many things, that the fact that public schools are bad, the fact that governments have done such a horrible job with inflation, and have forced the cost of living to go up so much that they have to do stuff like this rather than fix the underlying problem. And it's so many. I mean, this story, and I mean, it's a symptom of a bigger issue. Is that the public schools are bad, inflation, the cost of living has gone up so rapidly that people can't afford to live on this whatever it is, $12 or $13 an hour anymore. And really, we have to fix the underlying problems rather than just artificially fixing another problem, which, again, $15 an hour minimum wage, it doesn't actually fix the problem. All that happens is the price of labor just goes up, or the price of products is just going to go up, and you're not really going to get anywhere, right? Because if you're working at a grocery store and everyone's on minimum wage, they're making $12, or let's just say 10 for an easy number, and they raise it to 15. That's a 50% increase, which means the people making that $10 an hour, more than likely, some of them are, but the majority of them aren't producing much more than, let's say, 12, maybe 13 dollars an hour, just because the employer's got to make something, and not to mention they have the cost of overhead and all that stuff. So they have to be. If you're making $10 an hour in a free market, you have to be producing more than that, because the employer needs to keep the lights on, pay the bills and whatnot. So you need to be making more. But if you artificially raise that 50%, well, the cost of everything's going to have to go up. The cost of food, the cost of even the cost for electricity and stuff is going to have to go up because someone's got to put all the electrical stuff in and maintain it and stuff. So there's so many hidden things that people like. I mean, even like Bernie Sanders, we're talking about a guy who's one of the most popular politicians for. I mean, he's probably not going to win the nomination, but it wouldn't be surprising. So we're talking about one of the top on the left, like literally one of the best politicians out there, and they still don't even understand these basic policies. And I think it's more of a position of moral self-righteousness, at least in his case, that he lives. I mean, he got a new house after conceding last election to Hillary. So I think it's just more of a moral self-righteousness to prop themselves up. They don't actually care about the poor or people making $10 an hour. It's just a means to justify their own selfishness and self-righteousness. So there's a lot of videos out there on this kind of stuff, so I won't talk too much about it. But like I said, number one, it just goes to show that they don't even, and the other thing too is that they don't even believe in their own policies. Like if they don't even believe in their own policies, why in the world would you? Like it makes absolutely no sense that someone else can, if someone had a theory if someone made some bold prediction and they weren't even like living out to help fulfill that prediction, like would you believe them? Or if someone had an idea that for example climate change is this huge issue and they have 4 or 5 houses and they're flying around in private jets all the time, like would you trust their opinion? Like to me, like no one in the right mind would do that. But the problem is we have a very large percentage of the population that do that. And then I mean, that's just another testament to how bad the public schools are, is that we don't teach people critical thinking at all. In fact, we teach them the opposite of critical thinking, not directly, but indirectly. But that's another topic and story in and of itself. So I'll leave it here. I think I got the point across as far as this video goes. So if you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe and stay tuned for more.